Hello, and welcome to our piano lessons. Today, we're going to be talking about note values and rests. Hello! Hello!
Hello!
Well, I don't know! Yeah. Ah. I'm sweating! First things first, let's talk about note values. In the previous lesson, we mentioned that the circle indicates the notes, and then the look of the note indicates other things. So today we're going to learn that what those other things are is the rhythm, the beat, or how long we're supposed to be holding those notes. In the first one, right here, this one is called a whole note. This one is called a half note. This one is called a quarter note. This one is called an eighth note. The last one is called a 16th note. Now, if you look at the eighth note, you can see that they could be tied together with the beam, or it could be separate with a little hook-looking thing. And it's the same thing with the 16th notes. They can be tied together in a group, or when they're alone, they'll have the hook hanging off. To know the value of a note, you need to look at the time signature. The time signature is indicated with two numbers, one on top and one on the bottom. The top one indicates the amount of beats in a bar, and the bottom one indicates what we are counting. So today we're going to be looking at 4/4. Another way of saying it is 4/4. So 4 quarter notes per bar. So which one is the quarter notes? It's these ones. So that means there's supposed to be 4 of them every bar. A bar is the square that's separated by lines. So every square, if you want to call them, or bar, there's supposed to be equivalent of 4 quarter notes. So if we're counting the quarter notes, their value is now considered as 1. The half note is twice as long, so that makes it 2. The whole note is twice longer, so it's 4. These are half, and these are a quarter of a beat. Now, what is a beat? A beat is usually measured by ticks per minute, so beats per minute. So 60 seconds is 60 beats per minute. Every second is 1 beat. So if we increase the amount of beats, they're going to be faster. They're going to be more together. So for an example, we'll need to use a metronome. So when you use a metronome, it will indicate ticks. If I clap my hands, that would be a mini beat. So every clap of my hand is 1 beat. So if I want to play a quarter note for 1 beat, I would hold it for 1 clap to another clap. If it's 2 beats, it would be 2 claps, and so on and so forth. We'll be going through more with rhythms as we play the piano, but today let's just try to remember their actual values and what they look like. In equivalence to note values, we have rests, is when you do not play anything. The rests are indicated with different shapes and forms. We have the whole rest, that is the same value as a whole note, which is 4 beat in this case. The half rest is 2 beats, a quarter of a rest, 1 beat, eighth of a rest, and then this one right here is a 16th of a rest. This concludes our note values and rests. Let's continue a little more about reading notes with playing techniques. We learned how to play the different playing techniques on the piano, but how are they indicated on a piece of paper? Here we have all 3 different types. In the first bar, we see the legato. If you've noticed, there's a line that is tying all the notes together, which means starting from the first note, you play legato until the last note, tying all of the notes in between. So you play G, you play F, you let go of G, play D, let go of F, play C, let go of D. That would be tying the note. There would be no spaces. The second bar has the non-legato. In this case, there's no indications whatsoever. There's no ties or anything. That means you just play the note, let go, next one, let go, next one. You do not need to tie it or anything fancy. Just play the notes like we mentioned in our second video. The third bar, we have staccato. It's usually indicated with a dot either above or below the note. So if we see here, we can see some of the stems pointing upwards and some of the stems pointing downwards. Stem is usually pointing upwards when the note head is written below the 3rd line, and the stem points downwards when the note head is written above the 3rd line. Any notes that are on the 3rd line could have their stem either pointing upwards or downwards. For the staccato indication, the dot will be usually on the other side of the stem. So if the stem is pointing upwards, the dot will be below the note. If the stem is pointing downwards, the dot will be above the note. So here's a few more little details that we'll need to get through before we can start learning a piece. We briefly saw it, but I never mentioned what it was. Ledger lines are lines added for a note that is above or below the staff. So in this case, we have an A above the staff for the treble clef, and it has its own line. And then the next note, we have B that is above that ledger line. C has 2 ledger lines, and so on and so forth. We can add as many lines as we need to in order to get those high notes, because we have a lot of notes on the piano. There's also other ways to indicate the really, really high notes, but we'll look at them some other day when we get to play those. You can also have below the staff for lower notes. This is true for treble and bass clef. Another thing we need to look at are dotted notes. A dot next to a note adds half the value of the note. So in this case, we have a half note, so that's 2 beats long. But because it's dotted, we need to add half of 2, which is 1. So in total, it becomes 3. So I know it's a little bit of math, but you can look at it that way, or just memorize a dotted half note is 3 beats. Right here, we have a tied note. When a note is tied this way, means we want to continue holding it across the bar, because we're limited to only have 4 beats per bar. We can't just like move around the bars. So what we do is we'll put a tie, like the one we see on the screen, to indicate that this note is the quarter note plus the quarter note. So 1 plus 1 is 2 beats long. Here we have a dotted quarter note. The dotted quarter note is a beat and a half. So if we do the math, 1 plus half of 1 makes 1.5. Here are some examples of different combinations of rhythm in a bar. So as we mentioned before, when we see 4-4 in the beginning, that means we have to count 4 quarter notes per bar. Here we have a dotted half note, that's 3 beats long, plus a quarter note, which is 1 beat long, that makes 4. So we have the bar line. And then 1 plus 1 plus 1.5 and a half, that makes 4. Here we have 2 plus 1 plus 2 halves, which makes another 1, equals 4. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye!